Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Experiencer recalls abduction. I was in nursing school at the time, renting a small room in the tower-like school building next to the CHUV, the University Hospital of Lausanne. At a personal level, I wasn't doing very good. I was struggling with a problem of bulimia anorexia. I would have a binge-eating crisis every evening, and if, for whatever reason, I couldn't, I would go into panic mode. Much like a junkie. But one evening though, while in my room, I became aware that the compulsion wasn't there. It simply was gone. That was startling and very empowering. I could feel that something was different in the air, beside that fact, without being able to say what. Eventually it was time to go to bed, which I did. As I recall, as soon as I laid my head on the pillow, without going into the phase of getting asleep, I felt myself being powerfully sucked backwards, extremely quickly, with a strong vertigo feeling in my stomach. Next, I was aware of being in a circular, dimly lit room, with several rectangular doors, or what felt like doors, along the curved wall. Unfortunately, I cannot describe the environment more precisely than that. The type of materials, how were the doors exactly, the wall, I don't remember. I will say though that it didn't feel like I was inside of a craft. That's about what I can say about the environment. I was aware of lying on my back, with a heavy weight on my chest, no respiratory problems felt. I was feeling afraid, but not panicked. I began feeling angry because I wanted to stand up and couldn't. I was able to move my limbs freely and began struggling mightily to try to get up. I thought to myself, gee, I'm struggling so much that when I will open my eyes in my bed, I will see the mess I'm making. In fact, I knew that I was in two places at the same time. I had the awareness to be in that room, and to still be lying in my bed. I was convinced that the movements I was making in that room, or my body, was making them in my bed also. I think this is what is called bilocation. I was aware of the presence of one or more beings responsible for the weight I was feeling on my chest. I didn't have the feeling that an entity was literally sitting on my chest, though. I don't remember either the number of beings nor how they looked. To the most, something that I could say would be a color. Brownish. But with regard to their shape, height and other details, it's not in my memory. I don't remember what might have happened further in that circular room. What I do remember next is opening my eyes in my bedroom, utterly shocked to find myself laying fine in my undisturbed bed. That fact was even more shocking to me than the rest of the experience. I spent the next day at school trying to understand just what had happened. I knew it was not a dream, it felt completely different. At the time, I had next to zero awareness of Eastern Time-S aliens. Zero awareness of abductions. It was making sense to me that we humans were not the only sentient species out there, but that was about it at the time. In the evening of that second day, I got the sensation that the experience would happen again. I was feeling somewhat afraid, but again, strangely, not panicked nor terrorized. When I went to bed and laid my head on the pillow, it happened again. I thought to myself, oh, no, while feeling the sucking backwards phenomenon. And the exact same scenario repeated. I was in the same place, laying on my back, same weight on my chest, again unable to free myself and stand up. Next thing I remember is like the night prior. I opened my eyes in my bedroom, not recalling anything more of what might have happened in that circular room. Now on the third day, I was feeling fed up. I was mentally preparing for being able, this time, to stand up. I was going to show them. I was anticipating the night and the reoccurrence of the experience. So when it did happen again, I was satisfied and all pumped up. However, the same scenario repeated and I was unable to stand up in that circular room. I prepared for a fourth occurrence, but it didn't happen. It never happened again since. On the fifth or sixth day, my eating compulsion came back and my bulimia anorexia problem resumed.
Alien abduction shocks Eyewitness. I witnessed an alien abduction back in 2006. This occurred when I was 20 years old. It was sometime during the week. I was driving from work straight to my then girlfriend's house for dinner. She lived with her mother, grandmother and younger sister, so it was just the four of them living at the house. I helped set up the table for dinner. After having dinner, my girlfriend and I spent about 2 hours up in her room, laying around, talking and making plans for the coming weekend. It was getting late and I had to be up early the following morning, so I decided to call it a night. I put on my jacket, kissed my girlfriend goodbye and headed downstairs. I made my way towards the front door which led through the kitchen. Before I could even make another move, I saw two creatures leading the younger sister towards the front door. I was absolutely stunned. It was so shocking that I felt like I was out of my body watching this happen. They were both small in size with long arms and a long neck and wore tight black jumpsuits. I stood there watching them walk straight through the wall. There was another one, much taller. His face looked scaled and brown. He was wearing a robe with a hood over his head. He honestly looked like a lizard. He came out of the bedroom from where the other two came from, leading the way for the younger sister. At this point I was panting, my heart was racing. I don't remember anything else but waking up next to my girlfriend, upstairs in her bedroom. I remember so vividly that this happened. I remember every detail and the fear that overtook my entire being. The sister was spotted by neighbors, laying naked and unconscious in the front yard the same night. I told my girlfriend everything I saw. She told me that this has been occurring since she was a child and they kept it as a family secret. This also was a big reason why their father had left them years ago. After this experience, there's been other paranormal happenings at that house, particularly with the sister. We continued to date for a little over a year after the first occurrence and finally broke up, but kept in touch for several years, and the strange happenings only got more and more intense. It's been 8 years now since I last spoke to the girlfriend. SF.
Alien Abduction. 32 years of constant fear. In October 1988, a friend and I had an astonishing UFO sighting and encounter. We were both in our sophomore year of high school. I will talk about that incident later in my story, but first I want to relate other experiences. 2 years later, strange things started to happen to me. On my 18th birthday, I went to bed about 11:30 p.m. All I remember was laying down. Sometime around 3 a.m. I woke up in the backyard freezing and absolutely terrified. What I don't understand is if I was sleepwalking, why didn't my parents wake up? I know my mom should have because she has always been a very light sleeper. After the incident I couldn't sleep at all for the next 3 nights. In November 1994 I was living alone in a house that a friend's grandmother had rented to me. One night I was laying on the couch watching television. After the program I rolled over and went to sleep. Not long after I was awakened by very intense bright white lights. At first I thought someone had pulled into my driveway, and I started to get up to see who it was. I thought it might have been a friend of mine who lived right up the road, because he had come to the house that late on a number of occasions because he worked the second shift. As I was starting to get out of bed to see who it was, an overwhelming terror came over me. I laid back down and pulled the covers over my head. That's all I remember until the next morning when I woke up with my feet on the back of the couch and my head and body on the floor with my shirt on the wrong side out. I had a similar experience in 1996 at a different house in a different part of the country. Now, it's happened again. Early this morning at around 5 a.m. I woke and swear I saw 3 small figures standing next to the bed. It was pitch black because the power had gone off. I immediately rolled back over and put the covers over my head and thought to myself, I didn't see that. I don't want to see that. After a few minutes and without taking the covers off of my head, I reached over on the nightstand and got my flashlight, raised up out of bed, and simultaneously turned on the flashlight. There was nothing there. I was terrified because it felt like someone was in the bedroom with me, even though I could not see anything. Oddly enough, as soon as I clicked on the flashlight, the power came back on immediately afterwards. I'm not claiming that I have been abducted, but if I was, I simply don't want to know the details. I'm overly concerned that these experiences will continue, and that I will eventually become aware that an abduction is occurring. I have never received any communication, and I cannot find any marks on my body. The only symptoms I have are insomnia for several days and loss of appetite. But I don't get tired or sleepy. I have noticed that some items in the house are moved around and, in fact, a few things have gone missing, including a perfume bottle, a hairbrush and a blanket. To be honest with you, my real concern centers around my father and the UFO incident in October 1988. The night I had the sighting and encounter, my father went missing. He has never been seen or heard from again. He had previously claimed that he has been abducted by extraterrestrials and that these beings performed experiments on him. The encounter my friend and I had was very scary and confusing. We have never been able to talk about to each other even though we are still close. I have an awful feeling something may happen to me and that I may actually find out what became of my father. I have seen psychiatrists and psychologists for almost 25 years now. No one has been able to alleviate my fear. Nan.
Appalling Alien Abduction. I just know that they will be back. One early morning in the winter of 1990, I awoke from a very deep sleep, feeling nervous as my heart pounded heavily. It was 3:35 a.m. and still dark outside. I sensed that there was someone in my bedroom, but all I could see was a spot of light in the corner by the dresser. Suddenly several hands grabbed me from all around the bed. I attempted to scream but could not move or say anything. Nothing came out of my mouth. Within seconds I found myself lying on a cold hard table completely nude and terribly uncomfortable. I looked around me and there were 4 small beings in hoods and loose robes standing around me. They were conversing with each other, but I could not understand what they were saying, since it sounded like a young child's gibberish. I felt something touching me all over my body but could see nothing. The beings' faces had a weird glow with sagging folds of shining skin. After what seemed like forever, these beings slowly moved aside, and this human-like man walked up to my side. He was tall, bald, and had very pale skin. He also had large round eyes and was very slim. He came over to the table and started to talk to me in English. He calmly said that he was perplexed that I was so scared, since he made it clear the last time that they had met, he would return to ask a favor. He then turned and raised his hand, gesturing to a woman who walked into the room. She seemed to be a normal human female and quite beautiful. She had a small bundle in her arms and walked over to me. It was an infant, but it had pale skin and didn't look quite human. The tall man instructed me that he wanted me to take the infant and care for it. It needed the love of a human mother, since their race did not understand the emotion of love. I told him that I couldn't because I already had a child, and it was hard enough raising my son alone, since times were difficult for me currently. He raised his head up and down, as if agreeing with what I said, and passed his hands across my eyes. I must have passed out because I awoke and found myself in my bed. It was daylight and I figured that I had been gone for about 5 hours. When I tried to get out of bed, my legs and hips were very stiff and sore. I carefully stood up and noticed 2 large spots of wet blood on the bed sheets. The experience with the beings was still fresh on my mind, but I had no idea that I had endured any probing or surgery. A few days later, I decided to schedule a doctor's appointment just to make sure I was okay. The doctor recommended a full physical, since my blood pressure was higher than usual, and my ankles were swollen. An appointment was made at my local hospital for x-rays and blood work. To make a long story short, I returned to my doctor's office a few days after the tests were performed. When I walked into her office, she asked me to sit down and explained that my right kidney was missing. She said that it was probably missing since birth and was just never noticed. I found this hard to believe since I had given birth to my child and have had other x-rays in the past. I just agreed with her assessment and was instructed that I would need to start taking hypertension medication and would need to be regularly monitored. I am positive that the beings removed my kidney and performed other experiments on my body. Though it has been almost 20 years since that encounter, I just know that they will be back. Have you ever heard of organs and or body parts being harvested from abducted humans? I sincerely hope I can eventually get some answers. R.O.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.